Right then guys, it's PSL here, and I'm finally here with, well, the same video that I made last year. Now in F1 2016 there was a glitch / exploit where you could easily win any wet race in any car by fitting on the dry tyres. So last year I was doing the dry tyres on the wet track challenge on F1 2016, paused and clicked to simulate the session because I was finished, and to my surprise found that I won the race despite being miles behind and on completely the wrong tyres for the conditions at hand. I intended to see if this glitch was present on F1 2017, and if so make a video about it, before the game even came out. But it's much trickier to set up on this year's game because you can only simulate career mode races, whereas on last year's game you could simulate any offline race. The issue with simulating races is that the game looks at the tyres you have on and the theoretical best lap times you can set given the tyres fitted and the car you're driving. Now obviously if you're on dry tyres on a completely soaking wet track you won't be going that quickly, but the game ignores the track conditions and how suited the tyres you have on are when simulating the races. Now a good trick I used a lot during certain F1 2016 career modes I did was to change from the wet tyres to the intermediate tyres, assuming the race was starting in full wet tyre conditions. That was a good trick that allowed me not to get sacked during my all 10 seasons career mode last year, and it still exists on F1 2017. So look here, the Brazilian Grand Prix during season 1 of my Sauber career mode on F1 2017. Now this Sauber was even worse comparatively than usual because by this point in the career mode I hadn't fitted any upgrades at all. On the race strategy screen for that race, on full wet I could complete the race in 51 minutes and 21 seconds. Change to the intermediates and suddenly I could save 44 seconds. Unfortunately this didn't completely prove the exploit existed as I only finished in 15th. Sure, I beat my teammate by over 50 seconds and that was by far and away my best finish all season, but it wasn't conclusive and showed that at best the switching to intermediate tyres exploit has been toned down from F1 2016. Now fast forward to the Singapore Grand Prix in season 5. Yes, I'm not joking. Do you know how rare it is to have a race start in full wet conditions? And when it did, such as at Hungary, it turns out you can't simulate the race if your engine components are too worn, and hence the DNF. Anyway, here is when I was finally able to comprehensively prove that this glitch exists. Now just to contextualise this a bit, by this point in the career mode the Sauber car is now the 3rd quickest in the field. Well, allegedly, but it doesn't really seem to be the case, partly because Pascal Wehrlein, my teammate, has scored no points up until that race. Anyway, initially I simulated the race with the wet tyres on, and the projected race time was 62 minutes and 41 seconds, which meant that I finished 3rd and just behind the 2 Ferrari drivers. That is my first podium finish in this career mode, so I did alright there, and also my best lap time, just like everyone else, was just over the 2-minute mark. When I simulated the race again, but this time adjusting the strategy so I started on the intermediate tyres, I was projected to finish the race almost a minute quicker than on the full wet tyres, which unsurprisingly meant that I won the Grand Prix, and by 49.3 seconds from Kimi Raikkonen in 2nd. Also, I was the only driver to set a lap time below 2 minutes, so the simple switching to intermediate tyres trick does work on this game, but it is less powerful than it was on F1 2016. Now here's the big moment, because if you drive a lap on the full wet tyres, come into the pits and fit on the dry tyres, then simulate the race, it's an easy and truly dominant win no matter what car you're driving. So let me just lay this out. The track was soaking wet, it was raining heavily, the tyres to be on and the tyres everyone else rightly was on were the full wet. Yet I, on the dry tyres in the Sauber, which is the 3rd quickest car on the field to be fair but still, beat Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari by 8 minutes and 10 seconds. If you're being pedantic, that shouldn't even be possible. It should say +4 laps, but not 8 minutes because the checkered flag would come out before you complete all the laps. But honestly, that is a minor detail. The fact it should say plus 4 laps is kind of irrelevant. The fact is I simulated the race, I was on the dry tyres, the track was wet, but I still won by 8 minutes. If you look at the best lap time I set was as if it was completely dry, but it wasn't completely dry, but the game did lap times assuming that I was on the ultra softs when it was dry, but I was on the ultra softs when it was wet. Honestly, the whole thing is completely illogical, and this glitch, this exploit, was in F1 2016, and I find it funny that it was in last year's game. I made a video about it right at the start of F1 2016's game cycle, yet the simulate session feature is still in the game, and this exploit still exists, which I'm not even angry about, because I just find it hilarious. It's actually a useful exploit, but yeah, I just find it hilarious that it hasn't been fixed and it's still on this year's game. So there you go, it's complete deja vu. If you want to win a wet race on career mode, fit on the slicks and then simulate the race. It probably also works if the track is intermediate tyre conditions as well, but obviously the time you would gain is less profound, as the difference between the intermediate tyres and the dry tyres, given the perfect conditions for each tyre obviously, is less than it is between the wet tyres and the dry tyres. So I think that's pretty much it. Long and the short of it, the overpowered simulating on the dry tyres when the track is wet exploit still exists, very much so on F1 2017. Although, just before I end off the video, can someone tell me why the simulate session feature exists? I mean, no one asked for it. I've never seen anyone ask on F1 2015 or any F1 game prior to F1 2016. I've never seen or heard anyone ask Codemasters, can you fit onto your game a feature where it completes the race? You can't watch the race, but you can complete the race automatically, get a result as if you drove, but you didn't drive, and you can't see what happens if you did drive. It's not a spectator mode. It would provide a purpose then, but it doesn't. It's a cheat. It is a cheating method. I've used it on F1 2016 and F1 2017 a lot. I mean, the fact is I quite like the feature. It's quite useful for the all 10 seasons of career mode. It really is, because it stops me getting sacked. So I quite like the feature, but I don't understand why it was implemented in the first place, because surely no one asked for it. It came in out of the blue on F1 2016, wasn't advertised, wasn't promoted by Codemasters. It just got plonked in, and it's just used for cheating and for exploiting, really. Because I don't see the point of it, because surely it defeats the point of the game, because if you bought the F1 game to do qualifying, do practice, you don't even have to do qualifying actually, because qualifying is completely irrelevant, because the simulate session feature, it just looks at the car's performances and sticks you there. It actually completely ignores qualifying basically. So all you do is, I just don't see the point of buying an F1 game, heading into a race, and then pausing and clicking simulate session. What's the point? Because it completely nullifies the existence of actually doing a race yourself, of doing qualifying. I just don't see why it's in the game. Like, who's it meant for? It's meant for me. I mean, I've used it a lot, but I will admit that it completely defeats the point of the game. If it acted as like a spectator mode, if you click simulate session and then you could watch the race happen, oh my word, I'd be all over that. That would be the best feature in the game, but it doesn't do that. So I think that's everything. And if you guys did enjoy this video, please leave a like, comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time for what will probably be a more normal video than this one. So I'll see you then.